It started with something small. A shift. Subtle, almost imperceptible. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Work had been brutal for both of us, and 2 kids under 10 will drain anyone. But it wasn't just fatigue. Nora had become distant. Not cold, exactly. Just unreachable. Like her smile was hiding behind something I couldn't name. She started working late more often. First once a week, then 3 times. Then full weekends for conferences that had never existed in previous years. She didn't seem unhappy. If anything, she seemed energized. Alive. It should have comforted me, but it didn't. I found myself staring at the back of her head during dinner, wondering if she'd flinch if I reached for her hand. I didn't try. Neither did she. One night, I stayed up after she went to bed and found myself scrolling back through old photos on my phone. Our anniversary trips, the silly faces she'd make at the kids, even the blurry selfies we took in the car. It didn't feel like the same person sleeping beside me now. Then came the night I found her second phone. She had left her purse open on the kitchen counter while helping Riley with homework. I went and grabbed some gum, something I used to do all the time, and there it was. A sleek black phone. No case. No wallpaper. Just a pattern lock. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I watched her when she came back into the kitchen. She glanced at the purse, then at me, and her whole posture shifted. A flicker of something flashed through her eyes before she smiled. "You okay?" I nodded. "Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was wired. Something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong yet. That night, while she showered, I stood in the hallway outside the bathroom and listened to her hum a song I'd never heard her sing before. And I realized I'd been hearing echoes of a stranger in my own home. The second phone haunted me. I didn't bring it up. I couldn't, not without knowing more. My gut said if I asked, she'd just lie, and then I'd never get the truth. So I waited. Over the next week, I watched carefully. Nora guarded that phone like a secret. She never used it in front of me or the kids. Never charged it where I could see it. But I noticed she kept it in her coat pocket at all times, even when she walked to the mailbox. Then, one night, I followed her. She said she had a late meeting with a client from out of town. I didn't challenge it. Just nodded, kissed her cheek, and said, "Be safe." 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys and drove. She didn't go to her office. She didn't go downtown. She drove to a quiet residential street on the west side and parked in front of a townhouse I'd never seen before. I stopped a few houses away, killed the lights, and waited. I didn't wait long. A man came out. Tall. Confident. He smiled before she even got out of the car. She stepped into his arms like they did it every day. Like it was a routine. Familiar. Practiced. And then, God help me, they kissed. Not quick. Not guilty. Not hesitant. It was intimate. Deep. The kind of kiss you don't give unless your heart's already involved. I couldn't breathe. I drove away before I could throw up in my own lap. That night, Nora came home just before midnight. Said the meeting ran long. She looked tired but happy, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. And I realized I was standing in my kitchen with a woman who had already left me emotionally, physically, intimately. She just hadn't said the words yet. But worse, she had no intention to. The next morning, while she dropped the kids off at school, I finally unlocked the second phone. I had guessed the pattern based on her old college initials and our anniversary. It opened on the first try. And that's when I met him in texts, photos, voice memos. A man named Ellis. A man who told her she was the only real thing in his life. A man she called home. And then I found the voicemail. Her voice. Soft, breathy. I hate lying to him, but I can't leave just yet. I need to wait until the timing is right. Until everything's in place. Everything? What the hell was she planning? The phrase, "until everything's in place," echoed in my head for days. It wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. A slow, calculated unraveling of our life, designed by the woman I once believed would never lie to me. I listened to the voicemail again and again, dissecting every pause, every word. There was no regret in her voice. Only anticipation. Excitement. She wanted to leave, but she wanted to leave on her terms. So I made a decision. If she was planning an escape, I would build a net around her plans before she could disappear. I took screenshots of every message on the second phone, exported voicemails, saved photos. One in particular stood out, a selfie she'd taken in front of a beach cottage I didn't recognize, captioned, "Someday, this will be ours." The timestamp was just 2 weeks old. I ran a reverse image search and matched the porch to a rental property in Maine. Ellis had booked it for a week next month, right when Nora was supposedly attending a women's leadership retreat. So that's what everything in place meant. She wasn't going to confess. She was going to vanish. Take the kids? Leave them behind? Drain our accounts first? I didn't know yet, but I intended to find out. That night, I asked her what she thought about taking a family trip next month. Somewhere quiet. Maybe the lake house in Vermont. She hesitated for half a second. I think work's going to be crazy, and I already have that retreat. Remember, right? I said. The one in Portland? She blinked. No, Boston. Liar. I nodded, pretending to forget, pretending to trust. Later, while she slept, I started pulling our financial statements. I spotted the first red flag immediately. 3 transfers from our joint account to a newly created savings account in her name only, each just below the threshold that would require my approval. Small moves. Meant not to trigger alarms, but they had. She was building her exit quietly, and I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to let her finish it, so I could expose everything when she thought she'd finally won. Pretending became my new full-time job. I smiled during breakfast, packed lunches, sat beside Nora on the couch while she scrolled through her phone and faked laughter at shows we used to love. All the while, I knew she was texting Ellis, plotting, dreaming, and I was letting her. Because now, I was collecting everything. I installed software on her laptop, a tracker on her car. Nothing invasive, just enough to log movement, capture activity. Every detail mattered now. This wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about outmaneuvering her. I made backup copies of everything. 2 drives, one locked in my office drawer, the other mailed to Ben, an old friend and divorce attorney I'd known since college. I told him everything. Showed him what I had. You've got a case, he said. More than a case, you've got a grenade. I wasn't ready to pull the pin. Not yet. But soon. Meanwhile, the trackers told me what I expected. Midweek lunch meetups with Ellis at boutique cafes, a visit to the same rental house she planned to retreat at, long Sunday drives where she wasn't alone. She came home glowing. I came home quietly furious. The worst part? The kids adored her. She was still a good mother on the surface, baking cookies, helping with homework, volunteering for class projects. No one saw the shadow behind her smiles. No one saw what I saw. I envied their ignorance. One night, after putting Riley to bed, I asked her what she thought about Mom and Dad. She shrugged. You love each other, right? Why do you think that? Because you laugh sometimes. And you don't fight. I nodded, forcing a smile. That's a good guess. She tilted her head. But sometimes, Mom looks sad. And you look like you're pretending not to notice. I nearly broke. Kids always see it first. I kissed her forehead and said goodnight. Then I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and started writing the timeline. Every move Nora had made. Every step she'd taken since the affair began. Because when the storm came, I wouldn't just need proof. I'd need order. And I was going to be ready. Somewhere along the line, I stopped thinking of her as Nora. She became her. The woman sleeping in my bed. The woman packing lunch for our kids while texting another man she called baby. She still kissed me on the cheek. Still asked how work was. But none of it was real. She wasn't Nora anymore. She was a stranger playing a familiar role. That realization hit me hardest when I watched the security footage. I hadn't planned to install cameras. But one night, when she said she'd be working late at the office, something told me to check. I logged into her car tracker. It said she was across town, parked at a house I didn't recognize. So I placed a camera near our garage. Just one, facing the driveway. A week later, it caught everything. Nora pulled in around 11:30 p.m. Her hair was a mess. Her lipstick smudged. Ellis stepped out of the passenger side. They kissed again, slow, deliberate, like no one was watching. But I was. She led him through the side door, into our laundry room, into our home. He didn't stay long, less than an hour, but he was inside. He walked the same halls our children played in, the same floors where we opened Christmas gifts, where I once knelt and proposed to her with shaking hands. When she returned to bed that night, I stared at the ceiling for hours. How many times had she done this? How many lies layered on top of each other, so neatly, so easily? The next morning, she was cheerful, made waffles, hummed while wiping the counter. I took my coffee to the back deck and sat in silence. Because now I knew this wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a violation of space, of memory, of history. She hadn't just chosen someone else. She had desecrated us. But I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready for the war. I was still laying traps, still collecting ammo. And the final part of my plan was already in motion. A week later, I received an anonymous email. No subject, no signature, just one line. "You're not the only one she's lied to." Attached was a zip file. My stomach twisted. It could have been spam, malware, a sick joke. But something told me this was real. I scanned it through 3 layers of antivirus, opened it on a clean device, and there it was, a folder labeled Nora, before you. Inside were photos, text messages, voicemails. They weren't mine. They weren't Ellis's either. They were from someone named Shay, a woman. The text stretched back 6 years. The tone was flirty at first, then intimate, then angry. Screenshots showed Nora promising Shay they'd figure it out, that she'd leave soon, that me, didn't fulfill her emotionally. Eventually, Shay confronted her about Ellis. The tone turned bitter, then desperate. The last voicemail was raw, tear-stained even through audio. "You do this. You find someone, make them feel special, then vanish when they ask for more. I don't care who your next victim is. Just don't pretend you love people when all you want is control." I sat frozen for almost an hour. She had done this before. More than once. She had woven webs for others before Ellis. Before me. Seduced, promised, lied. It wasn't a story about one affair anymore. It was a pattern. A history. A pathology. I replied to the sender with one word. "Who are you?" No response. But it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Now I wasn't just preparing to expose an affair. I was about to reveal a woman who had built her identity on emotional fraud. And the world she so carefully constructed? It wasn't just fragile. It was rotten from the start. Once I saw Nora's betrayal wasn't an isolated mistake, everything about her shifted. Her kindness looked calculated. Her laughter, rehearsed. Even the way she curled up next to me at night felt like part of an act she'd perfected across multiple stages, with different co-stars. I had never been her only audience. And Ellis? He was just the latest front-row ticket. I watched her more closely now, not to catch her in more lies, but to understand her rhythm. When she felt most powerful, when she let her guard down, when her mask slipped, that's when I noticed her pattern. Before she lied, she smiled wider, spoke softer. Her voice dipped ever so slightly, like a lullaby. A technique, meant to disarm. Then she'd tell me she was heading to the studio, or that a client wanted to grab coffee after hours, or that she needed space. Every time, she left with that smile. Every time, she came back with that same glow. The smile wasn't joy. It was conquest. I realized I wasn't just dealing with infidelity. I was dealing with emotional manipulation at scale. And still, I didn't confront her. Because her smile may have been her power, but mine? Mine was patience. I kept building my case. Kept adding dates and times, photos and texts, voicemails and trackers. Every thread of her double life, woven into a single, airtight narrative. Then one night, while she was out with Ellis, I found something I didn't expect. A draft email to her lawyer. She hadn't sent it yet, but it was there saved under the innocuous title Client Notes. And in it, she described me as emotionally absent, financially careless, and unwilling to prioritize intimacy. She was preparing to paint me as the villain. The setup was in motion. She'd gaslight me, guilt the kids, spin the story. And then she'd leave looking like the brave, exhausted woman who tried her best. But what she didn't know, I already had the ending written. And she was about to star in a story she didn't script. The neighborhood held its annual garden party every spring. Nora loved it, loved the dresses, the compliments, the casual glamour of being admired by people who only knew her surface. She begged me to go this year, said it would be good for us, that maybe we needed to be seen together again. I said yes. It was the perfect setting. I wore a pressed shirt and a practiced smile. Nora wore white, like she always did, symbolism, irony, or both. People greeted us like we were still the golden couple, complimenting our beautiful family and strong bond. I stood beside her, playing the role I'd been given. And then I saw him. Ellis. He was across the lawn near the drinks table, laughing with someone from the neighborhood board. He didn't see me at first, but Nora did. Her smile faltered for half a second, then returned. I leaned closer. Inviting your boyfriend to the same party was bold. She stiffened. He's not. I know everything, I said quietly. Don't waste energy pretending. She didn't respond, didn't even blink. Just turned toward the food table and took a bite of fruit like nothing had happened. Later, I watched from the patio as she slipped away toward the back garden. Minutes later, Ellis followed. I counted 60 seconds, then walked in the same direction. They were near the hedge, talking low. Close, but not touching. Not yet. I stepped out and cleared my throat. Ellis turned first. His face dropped. Nora stepped forward. "Taylor, don't cause a scene." I chuckled. "Why? You seem to love performing." Ellis tried to speak. I raised a hand. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to warn you." Nora crossed her arms. "About what?" "The countdown is nearly over," I said. "And when it hits 0, everyone in this neighborhood, everyone in your little curated life, is going to know who you really are." I stepped closer, quiet enough that only she could hear. "And next time you look into our kids' eyes, remember, they'll know too." I left without waiting for her reply, because fear was beginning to show in her eyes. And I was just getting started. The next morning, Nora pretended nothing happened. She brewed coffee, chatted with the kids, even kissed me on the cheek as I headed to work, like the night before hadn't cracked her world open. But I saw it. Her hands trembled when she poured cream. She avoided my eyes. The mask was still on, but it was starting to slip. She didn't know exactly what I had. That was the power. Over the next few days, I planted seeds. Quiet ones. I uploaded files, photos, screenshots, transcripts into a secure online archive, accessible by one link. Password protected. The password? Our anniversary. I figured if she tried to guess it, she'd be faced with a bitter irony. I also reached out to a handful of people she cared about, former coworkers, close family friends, the woman she called her second mother. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. Enough to get them curious, to make them ask questions. I wasn't seeking pity. I wanted silence to become noise. By the end of the week, I had compiled a 12-minute presentation. Not dramatic, not sensational, just the facts, a timeline of the affair, proof of financial deceit, audio clips of her lies, and the names of 2 previous partners she'd manipulated before Ellis. It ended with a message in white text on a black screen. "Sometimes the person you think you love never really existed." It was nearly time. But before I unleashed the truth, I gave her one last chance. I placed an envelope on her side of the bed. Inside, a letter, a USB drive, and a note that read, "Open this and tell me one true thing. Just one. If you can." She didn't mention it that night. Didn't ask. Didn't confess. The next morning, it was gone. But no truth followed. Just silence. And that was her answer. The countdown was over. The night of the reveal, I didn't sleep. Not because I was nervous, but because I'd waited so long for this moment that sleep felt like a distraction. I paced the kitchen, the same room where she'd made tea while texting Ellis, the same place she'd kissed me goodnight while planning to disappear. At 9 a.m. sharp, I pressed send. One link. One message. It went to our shared family group chat. Her parents. Her sister, Mia. 4 of our closest mutual friends. Her business partner. The local women's community group she led. Subject line: "You deserve to know the truth." Within minutes, I started seeing the ripple. Read receipts popped up one after another. Then, the typing bubbles. Then, silence. Utter, digital silence. Around 9:45, the phone rang. It was Mia. "Taylor, is this real?" "Yes." "And the part about the rental house?" "Real." "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I told her. "Just remember it next time she calls crying." I hung up before she could answer. By noon, Nora called me. I didn't answer. She called again, then texted, "Nora, what the hell did you do?" "Nora, you're trying to ruin my life?" "Nora, you don't understand. Ellis lied to me too." That one made me laugh. By late afternoon, I heard from Ben. "Whatever you dropped this morning, people are talking." Her business partner is lawyering up. Her parents want custody rights for the kids. You cracked the facade wide open. That night, she came home shaking. The kids were with my sister. I had made sure of it. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes red. "You blindsided me," she said. "No," I replied. "You did that years ago." I just finally turned the lights on. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. Because now she had to live in the open. And the open didn't worship her anymore. The house felt different after the truth came out. Quieter. Lighter. Almost hollow. Like it had been holding its breath for years and was finally allowed to exhale. Nora barely spoke to me after the exposure. She moved through the house like a ghost, head down, jaw clenched, always looking at her phone like she could undo it all with a few messages and half-hearted apologies. But the world wasn't listening to her anymore. Her parents stopped calling. Her sister, Mia, sent me a message saying, "Whatever happens, I'm here for the kids." Even the local women's circle, where she once gave speeches about building honest relationships, removed her from their mailing list. The life she curated was collapsing faster than she could hold it up. And yet, she hadn't left. I wondered why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe she still thought she could salvage something. Or maybe, for the first time, she realized what it felt like to be powerless. Ellis, predictably, vanished. Blocked her number. Deleted her on social media. Ghosted her completely. Nora pretended she didn't care, but I heard her crying in the bathroom late one night. Not the quiet kind of crying people try to muffle, but sharp, panicked sobs. The kind that come from losing something you thought you controlled. I didn't go to her. I let her break in private. Because this wasn't my job anymore. I had protected her for years, her secrets, her image, even her dignity. But that protection had turned me into a ghost in my own story. A placeholder. A prop. No more. The kids noticed the shift, too. Riley asked why Mom didn't cook breakfast anymore. Milo started hugging me tighter at night, like he was trying to tell me something without words. I told them the truth, but in pieces. Age-appropriate honesty. "Mom made some mistakes," I said. "Are we still a family?" Riley asked. "We're always a family," I said. "It just might look different now." One morning, I found Nora at the kitchen table, staring at a single photo from our wedding. Her hands trembled as she held it. "You really did love me," she whispered. I didn't respond. Because the truth was, I still did, in some strange, ghost-like way. But love without respect is just a memory in a pretty frame. And that frame was cracked beyond repair. A week after the public reveal, Nora tried to reclaim control. She posted a carefully crafted note on her social media, one of those long, grayscale apologies dressed as vulnerability. It started with, "To those I've hurt, I never intended to cause pain," and ended with, "I'm focusing on healing, growth, and protecting my children from further toxicity." No mention of Ellis. No mention of the double life. Just vague language, faux accountability, and a neatly filtered photo of her staring out a window with a cup of tea like she was the wounded heroine in a rom-com. The comments were mixed. A few diehards offered support, but most? Silent. Or worse, questions like, "Did you actually write this? Is this before or after the affair? Protecting your children from what? Your own reflection?" She deleted the post within 2 days. The illusion had cracked. People weren't buying it anymore. That week, her lawyer contacted Ben. She was seeking mediation instead of a drawn-out court battle. Suddenly, she wanted what's best for the children. Suddenly, she was willing to compromise. Translation? She was drowning, and she wanted to settle before I finished what I'd started. But I wasn't interested in fast forgiveness or tidy exits. Not when she'd already packed a suitcase for a new life and left the rest of us in the wreckage. I told Ben to hold the line. In the meantime, I met with the kids' school counselor to prepare for what would come next. Milo had already shown signs, quiet tears when Nora left the room, clinging to me during bedtime stories. Riley was more direct. "She lies a lot," she told me one night. "But she doesn't say sorry. She just buys me things." That was Nora's pattern. Perform, distract, vanish. But the performance was over. No more applause. No more scripted lines. And as her story faded from the outside world, my next move took shape. Because while she focused on damage control, I was preparing something permanent. Mediation day arrived on a gray Thursday. Nora walked in with a fresh blowout and a beige blazer, like she could still charm the outcome into submission. Her lawyer looked tense, flipping through a thick folder that, based on the tabs, was too heavy for someone on the defensive. Ben and I were already seated. Calm. Steady. Prepared. She barely looked at me. I didn't look at her at all. The session began with standard pleasantries, but it didn't take long for the tension to break. Her lawyer, clearly uncomfortable, started with what they called a reasonable proposal. 50-50 custody. No spousal support. A fair split of assets. I let Ben speak first. Then I leaned in. "With all due respect," I said, "this is not a fair starting point. It's a fantasy." Nora narrowed her eyes. Ben slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial records, audio recordings, location data, and evidence of funds transferred into Ellis's account, joint money used for hotel stays and weekend trips while I watched our kids alone. Then came the flash drive. "All of this has already been filed with the court," Ben said. This is a courtesy, so we don't waste each other's time. Nora's face went pale. Her lawyer's mouth twitched. I continued. The only reason we're here is to see if she wants to avoid a judge hearing it all publicly. Silence filled the room like a scream. Her lawyer requested a break. When they returned, the energy had shifted. Her terms? Full custody to me. Limited supervised visitation for her, pending therapy and court approval. She'd walk away from the business. No spousal support. No fight. And the house? Mine. With the kids. Their beds, their memories, their safety. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because the price had been blood. Not physical, but emotional. The kind that stains slow and dark. After the meeting, she caught me by the elevator. I never thought you had this in you, she said. I pressed the down button without turning. You never thought I saw you clearly, I replied. The doors opened. I stepped inside. She didn't follow. 2 days after the mediation, I received an invitation I didn't expect. Nora was being honored at a local charity event, the kind of thing she used to attend yearly. A Women in Leadership panel. Apparently, the organizers hadn't heard the full story yet. She was scheduled to speak. At first, I planned to ignore it. But then I remembered something she once said to me years ago after hosting a panel herself. If you control the room, you control the truth. And suddenly, I knew exactly what to do. I reached out to the event coordinator anonymously and asked if they were aware of the ongoing legal situation involving one of their guests. I included a link. The curated collection of evidence, voice memos, photos, receipts, texts. The same package that had torn down her inner circle. I didn't add commentary. Just truth. No spin. No opinion. The morning of the event, her name vanished from the speaker list. Quietly. No announcement. But by then, it didn't matter because the event had live-streamed the prep night online, and a handful of people had recognized her name from the scandal. Screenshots were already circulating in the community Facebook groups. One particularly brutal comment stood out. You can't speak about integrity when you've turned betrayal into a hobby. Nora didn't show up that night. Instead, she called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I get it now. You were never trying to hurt me. You were just giving the world what I kept hiding. That was the first time she'd said anything remotely honest in months. And still, it was too late. Riley and Milo were with me at a park that evening, chasing each other through a pile of fallen leaves. The sky was orange. Their laughter real. I sat on a bench and realized I no longer felt the need to watch the door, to wait for the next lie, because everything was exposed. Everything was over, except for one final act. And it wasn't about her. It was about me. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's not fire or spectacle, it's precision. It's patience. It's watching someone set the stage for their grand escape, then turning all the lights on before they reach the door. That's what I had done. But there was one last string to pull. See, Nora thought the worst was behind her. She'd agreed to the custody terms, signed the asset transfer, accepted the collapse of her reputation. She thought I'd taken my swing and was done. She didn't know I was still holding the blade. Before she ever confessed, before she even met Ellis, I had created a living trust for our kids. A plan meant to secure their future, especially if anything ever happened to either of us. After discovering the affair, I updated it. Then I sat on it. Because revenge isn't just about removing someone from your life. It's about rewriting the part they thought they'd get to keep. Nora assumed she'd still have some legacy. That she'd be remembered as mom. That in 10 or 20 years, our kids might forgive her, even cherish what little she'd salvaged from their upbringing. But not now. I rewrote the trust. She's no longer a guardian. No longer has access. Her name is scrubbed from the estate entirely. All benefits rerouted to the children alone, overseen by Ben, Carla, and a third-party executor. And the final touch? The letter. A sealed envelope addressed to Riley and Milo, to be opened when they turn 18. Inside, the whole truth. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. So they never grow up wondering why their family cracked. So they don't romanticize lies or confuse silence for loyalty. They'll have questions. And they'll have answers. Not from Nora. From me. I dropped the documents off at Ben's office the next morning. Final signature. No drama. Just a quiet ending to a storm that started with a smile and ended with a locked door. And when it was done, I drove home. Our home. Not hers. The air was crisp. Milo was in the yard building a leaf fort. Riley was curled up with her sketchbook on the porch. I stepped inside, turned off my phone, and let the past dissolve behind me. No more revenge. No more war. Just peace. Earned.